And so I bring certain strengths to the table, and I have certain weaknesses that she overcomes. So we complement each other in that way. For example, I'm just wired for efficiency. Like I'm just a productive animal machine. And she's very good at relationships, right? So she spends quality time with the children, right? And just quality. Not looking towards your spouse for fulfillment. What is that Tom Cruise movie? You complete me. Like that's just a bunch of horse manure. Like if you're looking for some other person or something or circumstance to complete you, you're never going to find it. You're always going to be disappointed, right? Because no human can really complete or fulfill you.
You can't meet those expectations every day.
Yeah. So if people are expecting the other person to complete them, they're all going to be disappointed, and it's going to wear off as soon as they're no longer in love the way they were before. So, it's really more the other way around. I think when you get married, and certainly when you have kids, you discover, or I did, that it's no longer about you. Like when marriage, sort of, but really when you have a kid, you're discovering it's not just about you. And I think the more you think about it going into a marriage like that it's not about you, it's about the other person and serving that other person, and really fundamentally getting the agreement to help each other become a better version of yourself. I think fundamentally that's a really good agreement. So it's not like, what can you do for me, but how can we help each other become a better person?
I'd agree with that. I mean, and I think it's a choice that we make every day. There's a lot of patience that goes into that. And then just that choice, I am going to be here today. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to help Michael. I'm going to help my kids. And we're just going to build a life together day by day.
The other thing is being on the same page with regards to values. Now, we lucked out with that because it turns out we share a lot of values, but it should have been more of an intentional act. Just values with anything. What is important to you? What do you like? What kind of behaviors do you like? What kind of behaviors don't you like? Right. And you're never going to get 100% overlap. Right. For example, I tend to be on time and Vivian slightly less so. Okay. But it's not a major thing. It's not a major problem. It's not as fundamental about what you want in life and things like that. So get on the same page, with your goals and aspirations a little bit. So one of the things we love is we love traveling together. I mean, it's something we've always, even when we first met, we traveled as much as we could, getting on the same page, possibly. Well, when you start having kids, getting on the same page about how are you going to raise your kids? Like what's that going to be? Who's going to do what? So in other words, getting on the same page regarding the values.
Well, when did you guys actually start to think about values? Like when did that even come into the peripheral of, was it when things got more serious with kids? Did you guys talk about it before? What did that look like?
I don't think that we consciously actually use those words until, here very recently. But I think even from the very beginning, they were things that we looked at, like how do we want to raise our kids? I remember talking when we were much younger regarding discipline. Are you a strict parent? Do you need to give your children reasons for everything? How do we want that family to look like? Do we want to have meals together? And even as simple as holidays, do we do our own thing, or do we go and spend holidays with family, with extended family? And I think we started looking at those things early on, but we didn't use maybe that term, we are talking about our values and they are this. We didn't start using that language until here more recently, when we really tried to figure out what those are.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, 6-7 years ago is when we actually came up with our values. We can talk about that a little later on, but it was really not in the foreground, right? But looking back on it, that's really one of the key areas of strength for the marriage is having alignment in values. And then the other thing I would say is communication, being on the same page and then communicating, because you're getting and therefore your conflict resolution mechanism, right? So when you are no longer on the same page, or you get in some kind of argument, how are you going to extricate yourself out of that? And I think everybody can get better with that, but communication, I think, has been key.
Yeah, I think even in my relationship, I think one of the things that lacked the most was that conflict resolution mechanism. It was like if you get in a fight, it would last for days, and it was just super exhausting. And I had to get professional help to be able to manage and figure out how to navigate that. and I'm not ashamed to say that. We were able to figure it out.
It's good because
And
it's not, I mean, it's not intuitive for me, right? Because, because some people are much more rational than I am, right? I'm much more analytical, logical, and maybe some other people in the family are less so. So it's, how do you deal with that? I don't know. You read a few books, and so professional help is, I think it's good, because you're right. You can't let something fester for days on end. That's not going to go well.
no, and we're, as entrepreneurs, we're difficult people to deal with sometimes, as far as like
You are.
I am. Yeah, right. I'm not going to put you in any box. You're like,
I'm super easy.
I'm great.
Yeah.
But just it's more the situation. I mean, than anything. We're in this kind of, we never really shut off, essentially. And so I think for me personally, it's having some of those things in place, at a strong foundation. I think what you're alluding to in general, so your communication has a strong foundation, your conflict resolution is pretty strong in your foundation. Are there any other things that were foundational that you guys built that kind of put you on the right track for success?
Yeah, I think I would say probably complementary strengths. They say opposites attract. And we just did some personality thing. It was like actually a marriage seminar we're doing, and at the top it says, "You couldn't be more opposite." And so
I could have told him that before we took that.
Yeah, and so
long test.
like, so I said earlier, you don't complete each other, but for some reason you sort of do. It's almost like 1 + 1 is far greater than 2 in a marriage that works. And so I bring certain strengths to the table, and I have certain weaknesses that she overcomes. So we complement each other in that way. For example, I'm just wired for efficiency. Like, I'm just a productive animal machine, right? And therefore, I don't really value relationships or feelings, right? Because they're super inefficient. Those are awful for me, and I try to avoid as much as possible. And of course, that then creates other problems, which then makes me inefficient, and so now I have to deal with it because now I have a problem. And so there's my insanity, right? And she's very good at relationships, right? So she spends quality time with the children, right? And just quality time. And she values more relationships. And I'm not saying you're not productive, but that's not like, you're not maniacally focused on productivity.
Well, and productivity is measured in different ways.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like, sometimes I can be much more productive because we're having conversations with other people. So the information that I learn, the relationships that we've built, make other things that happen on down the road much easier.
Right. Therefore, more productive.
Right. See,
and we're all learning, right? So
wow, Vivian just dropped a big bomb on me right there. That's awesome.
That's just in the last 5 minutes.
I love that. I know. Man, that's so cool. So have you guys? It sounds like you kind of intuitively know what those offsets are, but I mean, do you always keep them kind of front of mind when you're navigating different parts of your relationship?
I think that's a hard question to ask now, like some 25 years into marriage, because some things we didn't do before, we had to learn. And then in that process, now we think about much more, like how somebody says something. Like, I know how to tell Michael that something is bothering me, not that I'm attacking or accusing him. I've learned how to much better say that. Whereas before, I probably would have said it in a way he would have gotten very defensive. I don't do that anymore. I try to say it in a different way so that he hears it more as I'm just sharing some information. So I think now some things are much more just how we do it, whereas before they would have been things we would have had to actually remember to do.
But back to your point, I mean, I think one of the things you're referencing is that there was some professional help. There was a marriage seminar we've taken that deals with conflict resolution techniques. I think that's so valuable, right? Because like I said, I mean, I'm not really that, I can't figure it out. And how do you extricate yourself or calm the conversation down versus escalating it, which typically is what happens. And so, certain books and seminars are really helpful in that regard. Personality tests are helpful, trying to understand what your strengths are and the other person's strengths are. And those things also explain some of the things that irritate you about the other person. Like, why can't this person just pick up all their crap, or whatever. And you realize that every human has certain strengths and then certain weaknesses. And everyone's wired in that certain way. And I think that's helpful to know about another person.
Yeah. I mean, It's a really good point. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, maybe they don't spend time or money really learning and getting educated on relationships and their specific relationship from a different angle. I'm of the mindset that I don't know my own blind spots. So sometimes that's necessary, and it can help a lot. And I'm sure, you guys specifically have done a lot in that area, which is really cool and valuable.
One of the problems that we have as entrepreneurs is we're always performing, right? We're always, like you said, you're always on, we're always performing, and you can always work harder, work more. And so therefore we tend to not pay attention to our relationships. And then it kind of bites us in the ass, truly, right? Because if you have, I mean, imagine you are constantly fighting with your girlfriend, your spouse, how draining that is. You mentioned how draining, how can you spend all your energy on building a business when you have major problems at home?